there is the first clause. The speaker states the clause to focus on the entire course that the action indicated by the transitive verb gives is conveyed from the subject he to the indirect object her, passed through the direct object water. We will try to think of the perspective of the indirect object her. At the perspective of the indirect object her, the indirect object receives the direct object water and the action indicated by the transitive verb gives from the subject. In this perspective, we will study about the second transitivity of a transitive verb by the definition. This clause, he gives her water, is stated in the passive voice of the speaker to focus on the perspective of the indirect object, her. The indirect object becomes the subject, so the personal pronoun she is applied as the subject. The conference is this. She is given water by him. We will focus on the relationship between the subjective complement given and the object of the subjective complement water. The object of the subjective complement is the direct object in the first type of clause. The second transitivity of a transitive verb is a concept to understand. A past participle conveys its definition to an object. A past participle is applied to describe the object in a relationship between the subject and the object. So the listeners of the clause think that the object gets the definition of the transitive verb from the subject and finishes the relationship with its trait. And the end of the relationship means that the condition of the subject and the object to the initial state without any interaction between the subject and the object. The past participle given to describe the condition of the subject to get the action indicated by the transitive verb give. And the subject is stated to get the direct object water in this clause. The perspective that the indirect object her gets to the action indicated by the transitive verb and the direct object. The transitive verb is transformed to reveal that the subject is the indirect object in the interaction with the subject, he. The form of the past participle reveals the object to get the definition of the transitive verb give from the subject, he, remains to reveal that the subject gets the action and the direct object from the subject. The past participle given is a transformed word from a transitive verb give to practice the role of subjective complement that describes the subject of the clause she with the trait of the adjective. The past participle given has the trait as an adjective because the substitution to describe the perspective of the object doesn't exist. So, the past participle given has the trait as an adjective. The subject of the clause she is the indirect object to get the action indicated by the transitive verb give at last. The reason why the transitive verb give is transformed into the past participle given is to reveal the first transitivity of the transitive verb give. The first transitivity is about the trait. The second transitivity is about the definition of the past participle. The form of the past participle is transformed from a verb because of the trait as a description. We can also find the second transitivity of a past participle as an adverb in the clause stated in the perfect tense. The past participle specifies the period when the experience of the subject lasts. So, the past participle to specify the existence of the subject for the period reveals the trait of the past participle to be applied in the clause that the subject of the clause is the object in the interaction with the period. The speaker declares the end of the experience with the past participle, and the first transitivity is revealed. The second transitivity of the past participle that is transformed from a transitive verb to convey the definition of the transitive verb from the subject to the object still has the second transitivity to convey the definition of the transitive verb that the past participle originates from. So, the phenomenon that the past participle conveys the definition of the transitive verb that the past participle originates from an object is understandable. So, the form of the past participle given reveals the fact that the subject of the clause she is the indirect object of the transitive verb give. The object water of the past participle given to practice the role as the subjective complement remains in the relationship to get the action indicated by the transitive verb give from the subject who is a male as a non-participant in the conversation. The subject in the relationship of the subject, direct object, indirect object is indicated as the object of the preposition by. The speaker who focuses on the perspective of the object, a direct object or an indirect object, considers the condition of the object the condition of the object is consistent with the interaction between the subject and the focus of the speaker to state in the perspective of the object is in the same streamline starting from the interaction between the subject and the object, but it is a part of the entire context, the entire streamline. So the subject to start the interaction is considered a distinctive unit. The direct object order in the clause stated in the second type of clause with the passive voice practices the role as the object of the subjective complement to receive the definition of the transitive verb give, because the perspective of the speaker is changed to focus on the interaction between the subject, the direct object, and the indirect object remains to be the same. So the indirect object still receives the direct object on the premise that the indirect object receives the definition of the transitive verb give.